Welcome, everyone, including Juliet's parents. You can eat whatever you like. The beauty of Zoom. So welcome to 440 Gallery Artist Talk. Today, we're here for Juliet Martin. Her show is called The Moment Before You Run. And then we have a group show in the project space with Susan Greenstein, Joy Makon, Janet Pedersen, and Sophie Pickering, and their show is called Flora. Both shows are up through May 25th. So I always encourage people to try to be in person there if they possibly can, but this is a great substitute because we're going to see all the work. We're going to right now see a little bit of the installation, and but I ask everybody to just mute themselves until the end. I'm going to ask questions, and then at the end I'm going to open the floor to whoever has questions. So let's take a look. It's always fun to see the behind the scenes, what happens getting the shows on the wall. A lot of rabbits.
One thing that was really nice about the installation of the show for me was that it was sort of both an exhibit and an installation in itself, having sort of the rabbits interact with each other and having some of the rabbits on the baseboard, some of them wedged in the corner. It sort of became a piece in itself.
Karen, I remembered what I needed to tell you. There's two people that want to enter. I can't do it when I'm sharing. So, but you're not.
Me co-host.
Let me stop the share. Oh, I can't even do that now. Okay, let's see.
You can go to my little corner.
Yeah, okay. Make host.
You got me?
And now I can add, now before I go back to sharing, I admitted the two people. Okay, sorry about that. All right.
Welcome, newcomers. Juliet was just talking about how although she has her individual pieces, the work as a whole works as an installation in the space. And we have intimate enough space that it makes it really work in that way. So we get to see these rabbits around the baseboards, rabbits finding their spots all over. We get to see their personalities here.
Also, while hanging them, just technically, it was important for them to have a lot of space around each piece, since each piece had two parts. If they had been right next to each other, I think it would have been difficult to see them as one piece and not just a collection of pieces filling the space.
Yeah, so when the space is empty, you see the rabbit in relation to its cloud, you see the rabbits in relation to each other, and then you'll see as the space fills with people, there's even another relationship, another layer of how to relate to the rabbits in the space.
This one is in a corner, you can sort of see.
And those are actually on a curve, which you can't really see. So they pop out a little bit. See the project space. That's you.
Those are jelly beans that I'm holding.
Now the way that the space is populated takes a different aspect when you can feel the scale in a different way when there's people around the rabbits. And the other work as well.
Everyone should have brought me roses.
Well, it's a fabulous occasion. And now we're lucky to see a little behind the scenes in Juliet's actual studio. So just take note of how these pieces come together. And we're going to talk about that in depth in a few moments. Here's the images. You get to see the images, and I'm just going to start asking our questions for Juliet. Juliet, congratulations on an amazing solo show. Let's begin with the undeniable theme, rabbits. Your rabbits are expressive, complex, colorful, and yet distinctly rabbits. What was your inspiration for this theme?
Some people know this, but when I start my day, I always draw in my journal. And the way I process it is for each new journal, I choose a subject and then I draw that subject every day until the journal is filled. And I started drawing a jackrabbit just because I thought it was very sculptural and very beautiful. Well, now I have 3 journals filled with jackrabbits. And I really sort of fell in love and started to see myself. And there was this sort of fear that I could really relate to. So that's sort of how it started. And then it just exploded. And I've drawn hundreds of rabbits since then.
Thank you. So the show's title conjures many rabbity thoughts for me, but let's allow you to delve a little deeper if you'd like. We would love to hear how you came to the title of the show, The Moment Before You Run.
So I designed these shapes and I paired rabbits with the shapes. And at first I didn't really know, I knew something was there, but I couldn't figure out what it was. And I spoke with a friend of mine and we just talked about the pieces for an hour until it became very clear what was going on. That because the rabbits and the clouds are made of the same material, when the rabbit looks at the cloud, she thinks she's seeing herself. And in seeing herself, she gets scared and runs away. And this piece is the moment before she runs, when she just sees herself and is frightened.
Beautiful concept. That idea, I think that that we're all a little afraid to see ourselves.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's really something that many people can feel when, you know, you're having a bad day or even a good day, and maybe there's more of yourself than you really want to know about.
And these complex compositions really speak to that. And so Juliet, can we now speak more about how you masterfully combine techniques to create each piece, and how does that connect to the relationship to the rabbit and its cloud, which I also think look like palettes or thought bubbles. And I love the idea of all these ideas on top of each other.
Well, I will start off by saying it was very hard to figure out what to call the clouds. We went through all sorts of manifestations, like for a while they were nimbuses, a kind of cloud, but no one knew what I was talking about. So I had to change that. And then, at first we were like, oh, cloud, but the more I thought about it, the more I liked that sort of relationship. The pieces themselves start off as monoprints, and in that I draw a swirly shape, which takes the place of the cloud. And then I fill it with pieces of weaving, some painting. The textures that you see are made on the computer, but they're bringing hand-drawn elements together. So I would draw little circles, and I would draw lines, and I would draw shapes, and then scan them and combine them in Photoshop. So they both look handmade, but also a little digital. Then I would try to pair that with some kind of weaving that either complemented or contrast the color choice, and bring together with the metallic paint, this, emphasizing reflection. So that was sort of how that all came about.
Well, they all like sit together really well, which if you told me like verbally that that's what you're doing, I would be like, oh no, that's not going to work. And here you are making it work, and really beautifully. So finally, let's tease out one of the primary elements of your compositions, the weaving. Please tell all, what is your relationship with weaving? And for our audience, I'd like to point out that one of the pieces in the show is simply a woven panel, which is remarkable in and of itself. And if you could talk about what inspired you to weave, and then what inspired you to cut them up.
Well, I've been weaving for about 15 years, and I've been discovering sort of each collection I do how to incorporate weaving into the piece and with other media. Most of the pieces I did in the beginning were entirely woven, and then I've sort of slowly figured out ways to combine either drawing with weaving or painting with weaving. But it's definitely been sort of a learning process to figure out what is a way to incorporate the weaving without either making it look pasted on or making it look awkward. I really want it to be fluid. Weavers especially just freak out when I cut up my weaving. It causes a lot of gasps. For the piece that was hanging, the full piece, I made that knowing that I was not going to be cutting it up, which is sort of a challenge for me to keep from cutting it up. And because of that, I really focused on the movement and the motion of the weaving itself. And that's a very different process than when I just weave knowing that pieces are going to be chopped up or put together a different way. And the whole process, either way, is incredibly meditative. It's they call it moving meditation, and it's a great way because it's active enough to keep you focused, but not so much that you can't sort of just move with the fabric.
Amazing. And I just wonder what you call this combo way of working, if you have a name for it, because it's mixed media. It's also sort of assemblage. It's pretty unique. Like, I've never seen people cut up their weaving and combine it with so many other techniques.
I call it Juliet's way.
I like it.
I would call it mixed media. I don't have a great name to describe it, really.
And does it suggest that this is the way forward? Are you going to keep using this?
Well,
Count
in the
three?
past, each collection I've made, I've used sort of a new, reinvented a process to either, I created little blocks with lots of glitter. I did falling skulls on abstract weavings, but this one really spoke to me, and I'm feeling like I'm not ready to give up this process yet. I feel like I can take it further. I really like the relationship between the painting and the digital and the weaving, not only how they come together, but in terms of my own enjoyment and love for the process. Each part of this is something I love to do. I love when I'm working on the computer. I don't find it like, stifling, and the weaving is so pure. And then the painting is a little stressful because I'm, possibly messing things up, but at the same time, very exciting. And coming up with the right color combinations is a great process. So I think I'm going to be continuing with this for a while.
Well, I look forward to seeing how it manifests moving forward. So thank you, Juliet. Everyone will have a chance to ask more questions. If you want to put them in the chat, if you're afraid you might forget, you're welcome to do that. Or when we're finished all the questions, you can just unmute and have the opportunity to ask. So now we're going to move on to the project space Flora. And let's take a look at the work in the, so we're going to move to Susan. Let's take a look at Susan's. Susan, congratulations on this beautiful show.
Thank you.
It really celebrates the season, but also celebrates such a timeless subject, Flora. What has drawn you to this subject matter?
Well, I've always loved painting flowers and plants and, things within nature. And I think the attraction has always been the patterning in nature, and something that's very steady about it, and also the unpredictability of nature. I love the fact that, you look really closely at it and you see things, and then you look again and there's even more variation than what you might have seen to begin with. So that's always been something that I've been interested in.
And it's interesting to see your work alongside others using similar media, and your spontaneity and your vibrancy always stand out to me. I'm impressed with your balance of abundance and also restraint. So how is this achieved? It's kind of a paradox.
Well, I've been, for a long time, when I started to paint with watercolor, I've been painting with watercolor for many, many years. For a while, I was just interested in depicting what I saw and interpreting what I saw, but really wanting to sort of tell you everything about it. And as I've been working, in more recent years, I'm really thinking about how can I tell you or interpret what I'm seeing, and also leave room for the viewer to make connections, and to, my goal is to maybe show less so that the viewer becomes a participant in it, that they get a chance to sort of make the connections that they see. So I think that's maybe I hope that's answering your question. But I think that's really what's happening. I'm holding back in terms of not wanting to describe everything so completely.
And if you don't mind flipping through, I know it's hard that you're being asked to do two jobs at once.
That's okay. I can do it. Oops.
So I'm curious if how these were created, if they were conceived of as a series, and I think it's just so fascinating how fresh each of them feels. So I think you've explained that well, that simplicity, but at the same time, the observation. So, so how did you conceive of these?
So I do a lot of teaching. I teach watercolors, and I do a lot of demonstrations when I'm teaching. And I looked at a bunch of them, and I was really interested in their relationships with each other. And so I decided to bring them back to my studio and do other works from, looking at them and then not looking at them anymore, and just kind of remembering what the essence of what I had painted in the demonstration pieces were, and then kind of stepping away from what I was observing and more focusing on what I remembered.
That's incredible. I think it's a testament to you doing exactly what you're saying, with the simplicity, because if I did that the second time around, it would just go completely dead. And these just seem totally fresh and vibrant.
Well, I have to be honest, there were definitely some versions that were dead. And what I learned was that it had to start, like, it's almost like I had to start telling the story over again. I couldn't, it wouldn't work if I was doing a copy of what I had done before. Then you're just imitating yourself, So I had to sort of reinvent, each time I would go to it, I'd have to sort of reinvent it in a fresh way. I mean, through the years, I've taken some yoga, and I know that one of the things, and Karen, you probably know this very well, one of the things that I've always thought about is, like, when you come into a new position, new posture, if you've done it on one side, when you do it on another side, make it fresh, make it something that you're coming to, in a totally new way. And I think that's sort of in the back of my mind when I'm painting these, starting off from ones that I'd already painted and then making a new version of it. It's, how can you bring the freshness into it? Find a new way of entering it.
Yeah, the Buddhists call it beginner's mind.
Right.
You're a master of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Sure.
Now we're going to move on to Joy Makon. Joy, congrats on your inclusion in this lovely show. You have included two incredible pieces. Your subjects are pretty classic, but I find your compositions always have intriguing perspectives. Can you please talk about how you choose your subjects?
Thank you, Karen. My ideal subjects always have enough things in them for me to paint to keep me interested, as I spend a long time on these paintings. I can spend 3, 4, 5 weeks on a painting sometimes. So that there's that. I like a little bit of story going on, a little bit of allegory or a tale, and they are all places that I have physically been to, so I'm familiar with them. And then I think lastly, it's the light and shadow that really attracts me at the end of the day. That's what I'm looking to paint through all the subject matter in these.
Lovely. So interesting. We spoke about Susan balancing opposites, and your approach is wildly different, but I think you do something similar in your balance of attention to detail and then also looseness. And I'd like to bring the audience's attention to the paws of the cat in particular. Susan, if you could.
Oops, yeah.
And then if you look at the treatment of the shadows below, the shadows are like pure liquid, and the paws have this incredible detail. Wow, let's talk about how you've cultivated that mastery.
Well, this painting in particular, there was the soft furry cat, which was very important to me, and I did a couple studies of the cat only on a separate piece of paper before I went back to this particular painting. There's all that rock going on, and I took advantage of a lot of the watercolor paints that I use. They granulate and they do interesting things, and I allowed the paint to kind of take over on the paper with that. And then there's also the light and shadow, and the foliage brings up another thing. So a lot of this is a very classic approach to compositions. It's a dedication to drawing. I can't say it enough. And for me, it's the accuracy that I want to achieve, and seeing if I can do it in paint. Yeah.
It's really remarkable. And I know that our viewers are curious about your process. Can you explain what goes into creating these? And maybe you want to say the size. They're really quite large.
hmm I like to work large, so they're either a half sheet or a full sheet of Arches paper, which could be up to 30 inches wide. These are the one from Brooklyn Botanic Garden is 21 by 21. It gives me a chance to have an overall detail over the entire painting, which I think is also part of the charm of it. It works with the texture of the heavy paper that I work with. So there's always places to look and examine as both the artist and the viewer, I feel, in these. And that's what I bring to these. As far as technique, it's a lot of times, I know what I'm going to paint. I don't always know how I'm going to paint it, and that's scary sometimes, but I approach it just, I try it, and there's no turning back with watercolor, a little bit but not really. Once it's down there, it's there. So sometimes I do experiment on a separate sheet of paper, but it's also learning to really work with the paper and the pigments and the water, and just over time, every painting's a different challenge, but it's just taking the chance to do something with it, and see how the paint reacts to what I'm doing on that. And I take my time with it.
Well, you're very courageous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joy. These are really beautiful.
Mm.
So we're going to move to Janet. Janet, congrats to you as well. I love how these two compelling pieces both integrate with the other work that's here and stand out at the same time. They have a sense of directness and solidity that's different from the airiness of watercolors. So how do you make this happen?
So these are our works on paper. They're, let's see, 30 by 22. So it's kind of larger for me. And if this were smaller, and if I were, I mean, these started off in the garden. If they were smaller, I probably would have done them in watercolor. But this or the other one, I had done maybe 6 or even 7 years ago, and I had just discovered working in Flash, and I really wanted to feel like I was making an oil painting, because there's that quality to it that you can build up with it, and kind of glaze it to get some background color. In other words, work with the paint to achieve the effects that I wanted. So, but I do leave, what I also liked is that I could work on paper and leave some of the paper exposed. And this was the areas that I wanted to preserve, so that it felt like it was light filled. The case of the trees in the background in this particular piece, I think I had painted it a blue sky, but I was able to work with white, and work with the sky and lighten it a lot more, because I felt like that would have worked. It worked with the color palette at any rate.
Yes, it sure does work. So I want to speak a bit about composition. your style makes it feel like you're just working directly from life. But I believe that the intricacies of the composition in both of these pieces are what keeps the viewer engaged and coming back for like a closer look. And I feel happy lingering with these works. I wonder what your thoughts are about composition.
Um, Composition is, I'm always thinking about composition when I start a piece. When I worked on these, because of the medium, I was able to alter things a little bit. As I'm a plein air painter, and so when I'm working on location, and especially when I'm working with a medium that lets me paint over a section, acrylic and even flash lets you do this without oil you couldn't. So I'm actually building my composition while I work. I'm less interested in working in pencil beforehand because I do want to surprise myself a little bit. I want to capture the randomness of foliage. I want to play with shapes. I want to step back certain areas and build up others, and even add things if I want to. I will often work on a piece, and then maybe 3 years later I'll start adding things or deleting. So, having that opportunity with paint. I mean, you couldn't do that with watercolor. I mean, maybe you could, but but I think that working larger and working in a composition this was a lot of back and forth for me. Let's put it that way.
It's a different set of challenges, and I love hearing that you work that way, and I'm still fascinated that it stays so fresh because it's easy when you go back over things to lose that that quality of light.
Well, I've many a painting I've ruined, to be honest. I mean, truly.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing right here. So, a tandem thought to the composition is the idea of color. So again, there's a sense that you've just come across these incredible light-infused scenes and just faithfully documented what's there. But what's the reality of how you choose to work with color?
Well, as I'm working more and more. I really enjoy a limited palette and reduced colors. I like the intensity and the neutralize of color that I can play with and pull out drama with contrast or step it back with a background. And they're all pretty much based on the primaries. In this case, this was blue and sort of a brownish color, that would be red, and sort of a greenish yellow ochre, and that's my blue. And like the flowers here were pink in reality, but I felt, just making everything blue plus the chair felt like the way that I wanted to go, even some of the blue in the background in the foliage. So for me, limited palette seems to work. That doesn't mean I won't pull out other colors at a certain point. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful colors out there and I want to use them, but this made sense for me to just simmer it down a little bit.
Kind of a symphony how you're working with how you make everything coalesce. And while you're talking, I noticed that the seat of the chair is really red, but the chair is blue.
I don't know how that happened there. I think, and I noticed there's some red showing through, so I might have scumbled red over to begin with.
And
maybe there was even a painting underneath to begin with. I don't remember now, but I don't think so.
Thank you for sharing your insights.
Thanks for your questions, Karen. Appreciate it.
And now we're going to move on to Sophie Pickering. Sophie, this is so exciting to introduce your work here at 440 Gallery. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Your work is unique and intriguing. So let's start off by asking, how is this work made?
So I work in handmade paper pulp paintings. I use a Hollander beater to beat raw fibers. I usually use raw flax. And then I color the pulp and move the individual fibers of the pulp around handmade sheets of paper that I've made with a mold and decal with toothpicks.
That's so interesting. So you're saying that you've cast the sculptural shape in paper, and then you're also actually painting with paper.
Yeah, I have a
Simplify.
yeah, I have the pulling the sheets of the background papers. I have the laminate casting of the armatures for the framing. And then I have the pulp painting with the toothpicks with the wet pulp.
Okay.
Mm.
And then there's also some other objects in this piece, right?
And these ones, there's sea glass and abalone shells.
Okay.
So,
Fascinating. And so the next question is, I love the pastoral theme in both these pieces. Susan, can we look at the other?
Yeah.
And then and there they are together, yeah. So but the window-like motif is pointing to some more complex references. Can you share more about your subject matter in these pieces?
yeah, and these pieces are part of a larger body of work that I'm working on right now. Tentatively titled "The Lawn is a Forest," and it's about how natural landscapes can provide respite in times of grief, loss, pain, change, and just how these, larger permanent views and then these smaller life cycles that you see occur in natural landscapes can provide perspective. And the windows come from, I'm always very interested in like kind of doing a snapshot of a moment. And I used to work at the photographic perspective, which is very close to this. I'm getting bigger. I'm like slowly inching my way. And but I used to work always at the very specific family photograph scale and shape. And I wanted to find a way to show kind of a looking in a frozen moment that wasn't photographic scale.
I love that idea. They feel very sacred for that reason. And I think what you're referring to about the pastoral landscape, it is kind of spiritual. So I'd love to know how this work fits into your body of work in general and what's, where it's leading.
Yeah, the last series that I did was about domestic space. And now I feel like I'm moving outside the home. So I've been making more works around this theme of natural landscape and permanence and impermanence. I've kind of always been interested in the contradiction and relationship between pain and beauty. So I think I continue to explore that in my work. I'm very focused on the ocean right now specifically, and I'm really trying to go bigger. So I'm working on a piece right now that's like 35 inches tall. So that's really, really big for me.
That's
Probably going to take me months, but I'm going for it.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yes.
And interesting, and maybe this is in a moment, we're gonna open it up to everyone who has questions, but that again, every artist in this show, Flora, has been kind of holding some opposites. So that's interesting parallel besides the Flora theme. Thank you, Sophie. Really looking forward to seeing more of your work and fascinating pieces.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to open it up to everyone here. Joanne, go ahead and unmute.
Okay,
Joanne,
first of
yeah,
all-
there.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to all the artists. It's a wonderful show, both spaces in the gallery. But first thing I want to say to Juliet was that I know that there's a lot of information, a lot of feeling and personal information that went into your show. But as someone from the outside looking in, it's one of the most fun shows I've seen in a while. And as you know, the AC sisters were just couldn't wait. So we're very, very happy. But just walking into the gallery, like today, I had to stop by there. And as soon as you walk in, you just have this feeling like of lightness again, which is so needed. And the work itself is just absolutely beautiful. I love the subject matter. So congratulations. I just couldn't be happier for you. And then the project space, there's just so much beauty there. Talking about how people work in different ways, but to me, I found something in each one of those works. Susan, yours are always light and direct and happy in your color. There's just a freshness that really makes me feel good. Joy, I don't know how you do it. I say that every single time. But the thing about the two pieces in the show this time, Joy, I feel like I've been there. I know I've been there. I can't say when I've seen a cat sit on a ledge like that, but it's just like I feel like I'm in the painting, and that's a really good feeling. Your technique is beyond me. And then Sophie, I just loved your pieces, and to me they were like dwelling spaces. Like that, I feel like the one with you, I think it's you looking out into the landscape. I feel like that could be any of us. And I love the whole idea of looking through the glass or through a window. So I just feel like this has been just a great show, both shows. So thank you, and I loved hearing about your work. And that's it.
Martin, go ahead, unmute.
Thanks, Juliet. Just amazing work, and I've seen so many of the pieces. I was just thinking when I was looking at a few of them that as I got up really close, the tension increased. This is very interesting how that happened. And my question was the way you had the rabbits positioned, like some are in the bubble, some are out of the bubble, some are on the bottom, some are together, and I just wonder how that interplays and just the rabbits being together. Does it mean there's more safety? Did it feel less anxiety, or the ones in the cloud versus outside of the cloud? Can you talk about that a little?
That's such a good question. That's not
Thanks.
fair. A lot of that happened during the installation. I made them in pairs, and in my studio I would hang them, a cloud with the rabbit, and sort of try to figure out the best way for them to interact. Are they on the left, or are they on the right? How much space is in between them? And I made about twice as many pieces as was showing in the gallery. But that turned out to work very well, because then I had all these extra rabbits, and I really, having them along the baseboard sort of, I like your interpretation of like safety in numbers, or being less scared. But I liked the idea of sort of the rabbits inhabiting the space. And I feel like what you were saying about like getting closer, sort of bringing out more tension. I like that idea, because I do think when you get closer, the space in between them becomes more present.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely.
I had a question for Sophie. I was wondering if you have had a chance, there's a show at the Met. I think it's closing soon. It's an artist named Friedrich, and he does a lot of paintings where they're of people looking at nature, and so a lot of times you will see them from the back, looking at nature. So it's kind of like you're viewing them viewing the experience. And the piece that you have of the back of you, really reminds me of that. And I was just wondering if you had seen that show.
No, I haven't, but I would, I'm gonna look into it and try to catch it. Thanks for the recommendation.
Sure.
His name is Caspar David Friedrich. I saw it.
Yeah.
I found it.
Thanks.
Couldn't
Couldn't remember his first name, so thank you.
And yeah, as soon as you said that, I could see the relationship that you're talking about. The cover of the catalog has him with his back to the viewer. Yeah.
Sophie, the structures of the windows that we're looking through, to me, have a lot of emotional power. They feel religious in a way, kind of in a general way. They feel ancient. And together with the landscape, and I don't know, is that something that that's conscious for you, or is it something that just flows?
Yeah, it's definitely conscious. I mean, I didn't want it to be directly like domestic necessarily. And I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to be referencing something handcrafted, but yeah, I've always find myself drawn to medieval stuff because it feels very old. And I think by like bringing a sense of the past, I want to kind of flatten time in a certain way, in thinking about just the length of cycles in our lives versus in that of like insects versus in that of the landscape, and the ways in which seeing those cycles in the miniature and the massive can provide a sense of calm when you yourself are going through a cycle.
One thing I noticed, Sophie, and the piece where you're in the window. It's like you're on the outside of the window, and we're on the inside looking at you, looking out. So there's like those three spaces almost. So was that intentional? Or?
Yeah, I like to kind of. I think a part of my obsession with the snapshot is that kind of playing with time.
Well, when you mentioned medieval, of course, that made me think of the very delicate work. I mean, what you do does not look like, a monk doing the first letter of, there's a word for it, you know what I'm talking about. Somebody give me the word.
Manuscript.
Yes, illuminated manuscripts. Yeah, but, painting with a toothpick, pushing around paper pulp that you've created. And of course, they had to create what they were working on. They had to create the inks that they were using. I mean, there was no store to go to. So, it kind of replicates that very ancient desire or connection. I mean, I'm not to get that artists of all time, the wonderful thing about drawing is like, you can't always tell, like, was it yesterday or 500 years ago? You can't tell just from the drawing. And of course, these you can tell, but it's that thread that connects us to artists of all time, I guess. So.
Thank you. That's part of it.
I have a question for Joy. Joy, both paintings are really beautiful. I think you've probably heard that a lot. But I was, I really connected to the one with the cat, And the reason, I mean, both of them are so beautiful, but the one with the cat, you really, because of just the way the light is hitting and the way the shadow is working, you know, you seem to have moved into more of a limited palette. And I was thinking about Janet talking about the limited palette she used, especially in the backyard painting. And I was wondering, was that something that you were consciously planning, or was it just in relation to, you know, what you were seeing and how, you know, how you, you know, wanted to depict it? Or was that something you decided, did you decide to limit your palette?
Usually every painting I do has a specific palette. So it's rare that I bring in a color unless I really need to. So I do work with limited palettes to start with, and then the painting determines that. In this one, what was interesting to me, can we show the cat? Can you bring?
Oh, I have to, let me share the screen.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, that's all right.
That's okay. I can.
The cat itself, I don't paint with black paint, and I mix my dark colors. And the cat itself is the darkest, blackest part of the painting. And my challenge was, how do I set the cat off from the stone around it? And I experimented with different pigments that I have, and I ended up using a specific dark color, not a black, it was a Payne's gray for the cat. And that, I think, helped the cat really stand out from what's going on around it. So that is part of the limited palette. And then the other part is that the greens that are in the foliage, they're mixed. I rarely use a green from a tube. I do mix my greens using blues and yellows. And the blues that I used for the greens came from what was being used in the stone wall around it. So it does immediately kind of give it a connection to that. And then some of the shadows and stuff came from that also. So that was a specific palette choice that I made with this. Yeah. And I was really pleased. I played around with it a lot just to find that right darkness for the cat. So the cat is the only kind of black tone in there, because that's what was there. I think that helped it a lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
Joy, if I can just add on to that, I mean, where the cat, the brilliant specificity of the cat, which is so powerful because of the beautiful looseness of the shadows and it just, you know, I mean, that cat, there's something about that particular painting that's very, very compelling, and the way that those two are balanced and yet so different is really wonderful. So.
I lost a beloved cat in December, and Lily was a solid black cat. So this is not Lily, but this is like as close as I'm going to get to painting. Painting Lily now. I've painted her in the past, but so it's probably why I chose the subject also.
Your homage to Lily.
Yeah. To a cat. Yeah. Yeah. That this scene actually is from Athens, Greece. I'm sorry, it's not Athens, it's Rhodes. We were in Athens on a side trip to Rhodes, Greece. Yeah.
So, Janet, you have a question. I'm sorry. I was going to.
I just had a question for Juliet, who, you know, there's a lot of texture to your art, to all of your sculptures, and we're talking limited palette. How did you come up with your limited palette? Which, I mean, maybe it needed to be limited because you have a lot of texture, but it's also just seems to be a color thread running through your whole, through all of your pieces. And could you just talk about how you came up with your color and the black that you're using to describe some of these shapes?
It's different for each medium, but in a way it's a similar sort of set of rules. When I weave, when I set up, you know, the structure to weave onto the yarns that I actually do the back and forth and creating the compositions, I limit myself to 5 colors.
Oh,
And I choose four, generally speaking, I choose four very muted colors and then a bright pink. And then to get myself to bring all those together in a way that looks very organic. Also, the colors I choose, I call them like fighting colors or ugly colors. When I was in 8th grade, I had a job beading jewelry for $2.50 an hour. And I hated my boss, and she would have me do window displays. And so to try to sabotage her business, I would take colors that I thought looked horrible together. And those are the ones that sold the most. So that was sort of like my color education.
Shock value.
Shock value. Right. Yeah. I mean, like at the, when I was in 8th grade, I thought that pink and gray were like the only colors in the world. And so when I would make these like ugly combinations, they'd be, more challenging, more interesting, more diverse. And even when I'm working in Photoshop, again, I make 5 swatches in colors and only use those colors and how they will interact digitally. So it's sort of narrowing it down and seeing what I can do with a limited palette. Again, in a way, very similar to what Joy is talking about.
Thank you.
so Janet, I had a question for you. So in the other painting that you had, not the yard, the still life, the painting flowers, you had told us, everyone in the gallery, you had kind of described your process, and I really loved hearing about that. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit of that now.
Sure.
Do you want me to bring the painting up?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. The still life was painted observational painting, and I had set up a vase with some there were some dried flowers, some fresh flowers in one vase there, and I was not happy with it, so I kind of sat on it for a while, and I ended up starting to come up with different colors in the background. What would happen if I painted that negative space in and around the flowers, and actually, introduced some movement there, and maybe even pulled out some other shapes just to keep the eye going, because nature just has so much rhythm to it and everything. And then I added that second bottle after the fact. So it started observational, and then there's a lot of yardage there when you're dealing with 30 inches by 22. And so, trying out new things, just abstracting the background, just felt like the right way to go. And how far to go, or how detailed. I just found that I could leave a lot of detail with the flowers and maybe a shadow and part of the vase, and abstract the rest. So a lot of this was a learning curve for me.
Well, it's great to see how that process worked out for you.
Thank you.
Now, Barbara had a question.
Yeah, oh, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Juliet about the humor in the installation, because I came to the show purposely not reading any background, not knowing, and I saw these rabbits in relation to, I thought of them as thought bubbles. And then, the title, of course, seeing before you run, it's sort of like, are they planted? Because it's that moment. They're not running yet, and so there's a lot of, sort of questioning and humor. So I was wondering if you had anything to say about the humor and the in the show.
I think with all of the shows, are very autobiographical. They're very much about things that are going on in my head, and they're in a way very heavy subjects.
Mhm.
And so by making them humorous to sort of bring you in, you see it first and it's a rabbit and it's thinking, or it's a rabbit and it's looking at a cloud. But then I think once you get beyond that humor, it leads into something deeper. And I think the humor is really necessary to almost make the person comfortable with what they're going to see next.
And how do you, if a viewer doesn't see beyond the humor, does that bother you?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Maybe it's because my dad tells really bad jokes and that's all right with me. So I think it's an inherited thing.
So that you do them in good humor.
I do them right. And I want people to enjoy them. And so, if someone, is enjoying it as a humorous sketch, that's absolutely that in itself is wonderful for someone to just be able to enjoy the piece. That is just as fulfilling to me as if they find something scary later, or
Well, one of the things that I enjoy is a certain kind of matter-of-factness of them. That as it's as you say, that it's very personal, but I think that that we can all relate to rabbits and sort of that skittishness at times, or moment, before we want to just not look, or maybe process something in a way that doesn't make us feel great.
And I like the rabbits for that vehicle, because rabbits are cute and rabbits are about fear, and rabbits are about Easter or Alice in Wonderland. And there's so many places that rabbits come in and people have different associations with them. So with that, like you were saying, like some person might not go beyond the humor, but enjoy it for that moment itself.
Well, personally, I feel like I want to make friends with the rabbits.
Well, they probably would want to be your friend too.
I think another aspect of that is that we don't judge rabbits for being skittish or frightened. That we just accept that that's the way they are. But I want to make sure I don't miss this. Larissa has said in the chat, every piece of artwork shown has been amazing, and congratulations to you all. I have a question about Juliet's fantastic creations. I'm not sure if this was already mentioned, but I was wondering about why clouds were used as the object the bunnies were looking at, since you mentioned that the bunnies are seeing themselves and getting frightened. So I guess they're also mirrors.
The idea, and I spoke a little bit about this, was to have, like, when I first started, I was thinking as the cloud, I'll call them clouds. The clouds were the background and the rabbits were the foreground. And I was taking the rabbit out of the background. So that was sort of the first idea that I came up with, that one was being extracted from the other, which left me with two things made from the same piece, the same materials, the same colors, the same fabric. And the forms were very abstract, and I took a while to figure out what to call them. But when they were paired, it seemed like to me that the rabbits were seeing themselves because of the similarity in the construction. I don't know if that answered the.
Does that make sense, Larissa? She said, that's so creative. Thank you.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I had a question for Janet and Sophie. So Janet, what makes you go back to a painting and like reinvent it or mess with it?
Oh,
And yeah,
that's a good question. It's just a feeling I have. I feel like I haven't either explored it enough or I will usually drop the reference, either if it was observation or a photograph, and so that I'm not completely letting the photograph finish it for me. I kind of want to put my own imagination into it. And I do find that putting a painting away for a while lets me see where I need to finalize it.
that's
I don't know
very
if that
interesting.
answers it.
No, definitely it does. And Sophie, I wanted to know what's the significance of the hand in one of your sculptures?
Yeah, that piece was specifically about when you find something in your pocket that you picked up a long time ago and you just hadn't worn those jeans since then, and it just takes you back to a moment. I feel like that happens to me all the time with things I find on the beach, and I just put them away, and then I don't wear the jeans for a year, and then I wear them and I'm like, oh.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Thank you all for really wonderful questions and
Yeah, thank you.
lively conversation. Before we depart today, I want to mention that our next show at 440 Gallery is a solo show by Ellen Chust called True to Form. And in this project space, a group show, The Inside Outside. And in that combo, it's going to be myself, Soan Plenifish, Robin Roy, and Joanne Acey. So these shows are up from May 29th to June 29th, so don't miss it. The opening reception is May 31st, Saturday from 4 to 6 p.m. So we'd love to see you all there. And I don't know if anybody else has shows up now or upcoming. I forgot to ask you guys that. Go ahead and unmute, Joy, if you're muted, if you want to say something.
I have, I'm in 2 shows at the Salmagundi Club in Manhattan, and they open on Tuesday, May 20th, with a reception on Thursday, May 22nd, and they run through June 6th. There's a show called City Spots, which is about paintings of New York City. And then the second show is an invitational member show. So I have 2 pieces in there, and it's a very cool place to go check out the building. Yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. And if there's no other shows to announce, I'll thank you all for coming, and
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you,
Everybody.
Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Susan. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh,